Welcome, 8th grade scholars. We are jumping right into today's explainer, which is titled Reread to Clarify Meaning, Forms of Poetry, Poetry Collection. So today we're going to break down some highly effective strategies for reading poetry and really understanding its underlying structure. Let's be honest, reading a poem without a plan, well, it can kind of feel like trying to assemble a giant piece of furniture without the instruction manual. It's frustrating, but by the end of this session, you'll be looking at poetry not just as a bunch of pretty words, but as carefully constructed pieces of literary architecture.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with the rereading routine, move into the architecture of poetry, discuss how form is a choice, and dive into free verse structure. Then we'll do a quick pause and check, and finish up with a recap and your transfer task.
Section 1. The rereading routine. A strategic approach to poetry.
So we begin with literally the most crucial tool in your literary toolkit, which is a structured method for approaching any poem. Poetry just requires a completely different set of reading strategies than a novel. So we use this 3-pass routine to lower that barrier to entry and unlock the poem's meaning, layer by layer. In step 1, you're just reading for the gist. Get the general feeling, the big picture. Do not stress if you don't understand every single word. Then, step 2 is where you really roll up your sleeves. You reread to clarify meaning. That means looking up unfamiliar vocabulary, using context clues, and untangling those tricky sentences. Finally, step 3 is when you look at the poem like an engineer. You reread for form and structure, asking yourself exactly how the author built the poem to deliver the meaning that you just figured out back in step 2.
Section 2. The Architecture of Poetry. Building Blocks of Verse.
So let's talk about how this routine builds our understanding of the specific architectural units authors use. First up, we need to define form. Form isn't just how a poem looks sitting there on the page. It is a highly deliberate framework that impacts how you read and how you feel the text. It encompasses everything: the rhythm, the meter, the rhyme scheme, right down to the exact syllable where the author decides to cut a line short. It is basically the container that holds the poet's ideas.
Now within that form, we have the line. Every single line is a vital building block where the poet decides exactly when you should pause and when to push your eyes forward. A line of poetry actually operates in 2 directions, which is pretty cool. You read it horizontally for immediate sense, but you also experience it vertically as it stacks upon the lines below it. That's what creates a cumulative rhythm and a deeper meaning.
And when we group those individual lines together, we get a stanza. Stanzas, like 4-line quatrains or 5-line cinquains, organize lines into distinct thoughts or visual shapes. You can just think of them as the paragraphs of the poetry world. Whenever a poet starts a brand new stanza, they are intentionally signaling a shift to us. Maybe a shift in time, location, emotion, or focus.
Now, you always have to ask yourself, who is actually doing the talking? That is the speaker. Recognizing their specific point of view completely shapes the context of the message. And here is a huge tip. Never, ever assume the speaker is the author sitting at the writing desk. The author might be a 40-year-old woman, right? But the speaker of the poem could be an ancient king, a soaring eagle, or a frightened child.
Finally, we categorize the overall purpose of the poem into broad styles, like lyric and narrative. These categories are super helpful because they identify the poet's primary objective. Are they sharing an intense, personal feeling in the moment? Well, that makes it a lyric poem. Or are they recounting a sequence of events with a clear beginning, middle, and end? That would make it a narrative poem.
Moving on to Section 3. Form is a choice, analyzing the poet's evidence.
Let's look at how we can actually prove that form is a deliberate, evidence-bearing choice by the poet. It is never an accident. Using these 2 miniature examples, we can see that form is a choice, not some guarantee of a specific topic or a certain quality of writing. Take a look at the fixed form example. The bird takes flight into the night. The tight rhyme and predictable rhythm feel finalized, very neat and tidy. But now, look at the free verse example on the exact same topic. Feathers catch the wind, upward. The line break right after wind and the isolation of the word upward creates this amazing feeling of sudden lift and open space. Both phrases describe a bird flying, but the structural choices dictate entirely different reading experiences.
Section 4. Free verse has structure, correcting a major myth. I want to share an insider secret with you all. It's something amateur readers often get completely wrong, but as 8th grade scholars, you're going to get it right. There's a major misconception out there that without a strict rhyme or meter, a free verse poem has absolutely no structure at all. People mistakenly think it's just random words thrown onto a page without any rules whatsoever. But in reality, Free verse utilizes a very deliberate, open structure. It's guided by natural speech rhythms and intentional line breaks. So while it doesn't follow a traditional rulebook, like, say, a sonnet does, the poet is still making highly strategic decisions. They're thinking about spacing, about exactly where to force you, the reader, to pause, and how to perfectly mimic the cadence of natural human conversation. Free verse is heavily structured. It's just structured by the poet's internal ear, rather than an external set of rigid rules.
Section 5. Pause and check. Verify your learning.
Let's just pause for a second and apply what we've been talking about. This is how we make sure these concepts are really sticking. Think back to the rereading routine we established at the very beginning of this explainer. You have 3 passes. Which pass is specifically dedicated to looking at things like stanzas and line breaks?
If you said pass 3, you nailed it. The crucial point here is that structural analysis happens in the 3rd pass, once you already understand the vocabulary and the overall meaning of the poem. Think about it. If you try to analyze the line breaks before you even know what the words mean, you are going to get incredibly frustrated. So always remember, meaning first, architecture second.
Let's do one more quick check. True or false? Because free verse does not have an established meter, it lacks any structural form. Recall our myth-busting discussion a minute ago about how poets choose to design their work.
The answer is false. Absolutely false. Open form is still a deliberate structure. It's just driven by the cadence of speech rather than a fixed rhyme scheme. Never forget that a poet placing a single word on a line in free verse is making a massive structural decision, and it's designed specifically to impact your reading of it. And finally, Section 6, Recap and Transfer Task, applying the routine.
We are going to wrap up with a quick recap. You must use a 3-pass rereading routine to clarify meaning and analyze structure. Form, whether fixed or free verse, is always a deliberate, evidence-bearing choice made by the author. Poetry utilizes specific architectural units, like lines, stanzas, and speakers, to horizontally and vertically construct meaning.
And now for your transfer task. Your final provocative challenge is to take this routine and apply it independently to a classic Lord Alfred Tennyson's poem, The Eagle. What structural choices will you discover hidden in his words? Will you find a fixed meter that mirrors the steady, calculating gaze of a bird of prey? Or maybe an open form that captures the wild freedom of the sky? It's time to grab your copy of the text, start your first pass for the gist, and uncover the evidence hiding right there inside his architecture. Happy reading, everyone!